What's up, everyone? My name is Jonathan, the host of the Venue RX podcast. Today, I interview Bethel Nathan, and I've got my hustle juice right there. Boom. Let's get this going.
You're listening to the Venue RX podcast, where we provide your weekly prescription of tips, tools, tactics, and inspiration to start or grow your wedding and events business. Follow along with our listeners as we delve into the exciting world of events. And make sure you check out our YouTube channel and social pages, where you can engage with our show host and guests. No matter if you're brand new to the business of weddings or an event pro, our mix of mindset and mechanics will challenge and inspire you. And now, without further ado, our host, Jonathan Aymin.
What's going on, everyone? My name is Jonathan, the host of the Venue RX podcast, and today I get to interview Bethel Nathan. Bethel, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. Great to be here.
All right, Bethel. So let's jump right in. I am so excited to interview you. I've, bumped into you in different places in the industry and in the past. You come so highly recommended by so many different wedding and events vendors. You are a wedding professional educator. You have a consulting business. You have an incredible story, and I'm so excited to share with our listeners your story. So could you just jump right in and kind of give us your professional journey into doing what you do now?
So I, as you mentioned, wear a couple different hats in the wedding industry. I am still an officiant. I marry really awesome couples. Labor Day weekend of 2020, I passed my 1,000th couple. So that's a crazy milestone. And so I've been doing this for about 11 and a half years. And I marry really awesome, fun, non-traditional, non-religious, down-to-earth couples who care about the ceremony. They care to celebrate their relationship as a huge component of the wedding. And then the other hat is that about 6 years ago, I started business coaching and speaking and educating all wedding professionals across all categories because I have a pretty crazy journey to this. I am a business person by background. I spent 9 years on Wall Street working for two large investment banks in Tokyo, New York, and London. I do speak Japanese, lived in Japan 3 different times during college, and after business school.
Wow.
And that's just a part of who I am. And then I walked away after 9 years and I said, I have no life. I'm traveling all the time. I'm working all the time. I moved back from London, and San Diego is where my family is and what I always considered home. As much as I loved living elsewhere, this was home, and came back and fell into running my family's business for about 6 years. And I said, you know what? It's still not me. And if I left sexy, lucrative Wall Street behind because it didn't make me happy, why would I ever stay in anything that didn't make me happy? And randomly, my brother and sister-in-law asked me to officiate their wedding 15 years ago now. And I loved it, but never thought I'd do it again. And then 2 close friends also asked me to do theirs. And the reason all 3 of these couples did is they were from intercultural or interfaith backgrounds and didn't have a natural person. And that's typical. And so when I decided to leave the family business and do something for myself, I spent a lot of time researching the wedding industry. And my husband's also an entrepreneur by background. And we wrote a business plan, a marketing plan, and spent a lot of time researching the industry. And I said, yeah, I think there's a place for me. So I launched 11 and a half years ago, and it's been a lot of fun. So now I get to coach and educate wedding pros across all categories on the business stuff, because you have a lot of very talented, creative people in the wedding industry, but not a lot with business background. And they really need that solid business platform. And that's what I love working with people to do.
Well, and Bethel, that is one of the reasons that I'm so excited about talking to you and Alan Berg and, some of the folks that I've had on the show so far and that we will continue to have. I share a similar passion, and at the Venue RX here, the idea is you do have so many creative and really talented people, but maybe there's some of those elements of sales and marketing and some of the nuts and bolts and the mechanics of the business side of things that may be lacking, or people may be a little bit just further behind on their journey. And so highlighting stories like yours and some of the tips and things that you bring to the table, I think really helps encourage our industry and move us along as a group. And if there is no other time to do that, now is the time.
Exactly. Exactly. Ever since the pandemic started, I've been doing a weekly Facebook Live on my Facebook page. And a lot of it is just, what can you be doing right now? What are things I try to have at least one actionable idea? And what is something you can do now for your business that has it more solid for when we're back to being busier again and weddings are back to being the norm? So there's a lot you can work on in your business right now.
I want to get into that because that is going to be the topic of today's discussion, but I actually want to go back because I have a question about your professional journey. So that first is amazing. You're in Wall Street. You lived in Japan twice. I mean, you're very highly
3 different
educated.
times.
3 different times. Okay.
Yep.
Very highly educated. Was there a little bit of a culture shock coming from the highly corporate, highly structured environment that you worked before to the wedding and events industry where everyone is, like I said, very creative and maybe don't use all of um, the structure, have any of the structure that would be present in your other job? Was there a culture shock at all?
Thankfully, I had that transition of 6 years of my family's business. And also because they've had that business since I was in high school. So I had to work. So I worked for them in high school because you have no choice when you have a family business, right?
Yep.
So college breaks, I'd be back working for them. After business school, I was working for them for a little bit while I waited for my Japanese work visa to come through to head to Japan. And so I grew up with entrepreneurial parents and a small business that they've grown to something pretty amazing. And then working for them for the 6 years where I was doing exactly what you said. Like I realized I'm like, oh, they could use some of these things I learned in the corporate world. They could use some of these structures and, even simple from like tracking certain things. There's certain spreadsheets. I mean, some of the simplest things that a lot of small businesses don't think of. So luckily I had that transition period because it made it a lot easier. Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, and that's actually why I started coaching because I found myself, I mean, I have so many wonderful friends who are colleagues in this industry of all categories.
Mhm.
And we share some of those mutual friends too. And I would be having conversations with some of them and they're struggling on their marketing, for instance. And I'm like, well, who's your ideal client? And they're like, well, what do you mean? Anybody who'll give me money. I'm like, no, that's not how it works. You have an ideal client. There's people you can knock their socks off, and there's people who are not your fit. You shouldn't waste time marketing to those people who are not your fit. You could never exceed their expectations or meet them. And like, why are you wasting your time on that? And there were certain things that I took for granted coming from different business worlds that I realized the wedding industry really could use help on. So there was a little bit of a culture shock, but it also was this relief where you felt a lot more freedom in this industry, that people
Mhm.
could do things the way fit them, which is a really wonderful thing.
I was going to say, I feel like there is a lot of freedom that comes, and to your point on freedom, there's a lot of freedom that comes when you can focus and when you make a decision to focus just on the people who you can wow
Mhm.
their socks off. Because then you're delivering and over delivering for folks who appreciate it, not someone who will be complaining whether you wow them or you don't do a good job.
100%. 100%. It's amazing when you get to work for people who value what you do.
Mhm.
It's a wonderful reward in and of itself. And then it feeds it. A lot of my husband and I run the education and coaching stuff together, and he creates a lot of content behind the scenes. And we've talked a lot lately about what we call the ideal couple cycle.
Mhm.
And that really continues to feed it because if you do work with your ideal couples to begin with, and you're able to exceed their expectations in both the end product or service and the customer experience, that feeds it because they write raving reviews. They're thrilled. Their friends and colleagues hear about you. The vendors you worked with also saw you at your top because you were working with somebody that was wonderful to work with. And it continues to feed over and over and over again with warmer leads all the time.
Mhm.
And that is a very powerful thing for your business. And so when you start working for the people who are best for your business, that's the beginning step.
I love it. I love it. Well, I want to transition and talk about that because we are in this time right now in the past 10 years, right? 2010 to 2020. Of course, there was a big financial and real estate crash in 2008 and then nine. Things really bottomed out, then 10, 11, 12. Through the past decade, we've seen a lot of growth, not only across the nation and I think even across the world, but we've also seen the wedding and events industry explode. I think in some ways, I think there's been many businesses that have started. I know certainly my business, the staffing business, we started in 2014 and we kind of continued to grow. And it was consistently an upward trend. And I have to say, I don't feel like it was very, very hard. Don't get me wrong, but I don't feel like I was killing myself to grow a little bit every year, and then we get to this place here in 2020, beginning of the year, March, boom,
We
it's just a
expected an
cliff.
amazing year. And so it was actually probably more painful because we
Yes.
all expected 2020 to be incredible. So many couples were excited for that 2020 anniversary date. Like
Yeah.
it was going to be an amazing year. And then cut. It was also, I try to explain to friends outside this industry that we all have a slower period. Depending on where in the country you are, it's a little different, but we have a quieter period typically
Mhm.
between December and mid February, or maybe into early March, depending on where you are in the country. And now, naturally, people are in desert areas, that's their high season. But for the most part, most of us are quieter. And so you've gotten through your low cash flow period in your business, you've gotten through your quieter, you have just kicked back into what you expect the money making part of it is. And that's when we were all shut down. So it made it
Yes.
even harder because we had gotten through what was already supposed to be the tougher part, ready to grow and be thrilled again. And that's when we got cut off.
And the remarkable thing also about this is typically, as I've heard and seen, wedding and events businesses tend to be recession proof. But as we found out, they're not pandemic proof.
Correct. This is not a recession. This is and I tell friends, unfortunately, weddings are the opposite of what pandemics are about. It's about
Yeah.
gathering people from multiple households, usually multiple states or cities, gathering together, having fun, hugging and celebrating. And it's the opposite of what a pandemic is allows for. And it's really extra painful.
hmm And so that leads us to the question for those thousands of wedding and event professionals who are out there. We've gone through a huge cycle of postponements, there have been cancellations, there have been all sorts of really wild stuff. And I mean, you posted a pretty intense article about that photographer in Texas on your Facebook. And for anyone listening, by the way, if you're watching this on YouTube or if you are listening to it in the car or whatever, I encourage you to go check out Bethel's stuff. We're going to leave links to it in the end. It'll be in the description and all of that. But she really does a great job of consistently putting out educational content. So huge props to
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
So check that out. And of course, check us out on all the other platforms that we're on. For the thousands of people out there who have gone through these cancellations, the postponements, and things are quiet now. This is the first holiday season that we've had in a long time where we don't have 15 different parties that we're staffing, and we're not totally booked up. And I was just talking to a band person who has a little live music thing, and he is in the same scenario. This is the first Christmas he's going to have not playing somewhere, and first New Year's.
Right.
What should we be doing during this time, this downtime? What's the best way that wedding and event vendors can be spending their time during this waiting period where we're sitting on our hands wondering what's next? Should we be sitting on our hands?
When I do my Facebook Lives, I tend to break things down into there's different aspects of your business. There's your marketing, there's your couples or clients, and there's your relationships. And so there's different, and there's your actual big core business.
Mhm,
Right now, the first thing is you have to be sure you can survive. Let's be
mhm.
honest. You have to be sure that you can figure out where cash is coming from, that you can make it through until this light at the end of the tunnel with vaccines, and that we'll be able to celebrate again. Now, again, the other thing for those who don't know, Jonathan and I are both Southern California. So California is very different, I know, than a lot of other states. And we've had a lot more restrictions on gatherings. And I remind myself because there's a lot of states where they really haven't been all that closed down from a weddings perspective, but we very much are. So first is make sure that you have your cash flow under control, that you also are doing a cash flow analysis of what you think next year will be. Because as you said, we've had a lot of postponements. For a lot of us, our 2021 looks mixed. Like about it, I don't actually, one point it was a half, but now it's only about a third. A third of my weddings in 2021 are postponements, and 2/3 are brand new bookings.
Mhm.
Now, that's very different from a cash flow perspective, obviously, some of those postponements versus a brand new booking. So just do an analysis of what you expect your cash flow to be. If you think that you're going to be doing weddings again as of March, if you think you're going to be doing weddings again as of June, whatever that looks like, see that you have a sense of it. So make sure that you have the business stuff under control. When it comes to a marketing, now is a really good time to be prepping a lot of content. Now is the perfect amount of time to be taking any of those pictures that you've had from weddings, whether it was 2019 or early 2020, or some of us were lucky enough to do elopements or super tiny micro weddings during portions of this year. And
Definitely.
so gather those pictures. Now, I don't necessarily suggest you reach out to photographers in the holidays, but you can wait till the beginning of the year. But if you haven't gotten those pictures, but any pictures you do have, really go through and figure out themes. What do you want to be showcasing? And remember that again, this whole ideal couple cycle thing, you don't want to be showing pictures of things you don't ever want to do again. So you can absolutely satisfy your clients with certain themes or styles, knock their socks off that way, but it doesn't mean you have to show it. You don't have to be putting that in your social. You don't have to do a blog post about it if it's not something you want to do again. So
Mm.
I would say really focus now on your content. Figure out what themes you're going to talk about, what types of imagery, what types of blog posts, and just at least get a calendar going for yourself. You don't have to write all those posts now, but at least get a sense of what you want that to be. It's a great thing to do in the downtime.
That's really, really powerful. I think it's interesting, though. It really ties into what you were saying about your ideal couples, because if you are showcasing all of this work where you were at a venue that you're maybe not interested in working out again or something else, now all of a sudden that might be driving more attention towards
Totally.
that. You don't want to be doing that. So
Totally.
not just for the sake of producing the content. I love that you said that. That's brilliant.
Exactly. And if you
Okay.
think about it, I expect almost every wedding, there's still something you could showcase from their wedding
Mhm.
that doesn't necessarily show the stuff you don't want. So, even if it's a certain color theme that you loved, certain colors were all throughout the linens and the florals, you could still show that without really talking about some of the other aspects that, yeah, weren't necessarily you. So, really focus on your content. From a couple's perspective, I talk a lot about the client experience, and this is even more important now. You need to be sure that your clients feel comfortable with you, that there's a high level of trust, that they feel a solid relationship with you, because times are so uncertain. They need to be sure that they can trust that you will be there for them and that you'll be able to help them out.
Mhm.
So I want you to take a look at your entire customer experience, your entire flow from the moment they inquire until you have offboarded them. So
Mhm.
take a look at every single aspect and think about what additional touch points you can add that will help either you knock their socks off better or you can help them have a better experience. Almost every client communication that you have serves one of two needs. It either is giving them the information they need to have a great experience with you, or it is getting information you need to give them that great experience. So I want you to look at all of your communication and see what they each satisfy. Is it helping them to have the better experience, or is it information you need from them to do so? And are there additional touch points you can add?
Powerful.
So,
That
like,
that's powerful, because I feel like a lot of us, we when we contact our couples, and I know I'm totally guilty of this as well, sometimes it's a bit random. Maybe we want to just get a question answered or something, but we're not really using it as intentionally as we could be to really, again, accelerate that value, or basically add value to their experience. That's a great tip. I know I'm going to use that myself.
I am thrilled to hear it. Thank you. And so think about, are there additional teeny things? Two examples of things that I did in 2020, for instance. So before this all went down, I decided that I wanted to send all of my couples who had booked me. So on January 1st, 2020, I sent a Happy New Year note to all of those couples who had previously booked me. And it really, the whole tone of the note was, you're getting married this year. How cool is that? Because these couples are waking up and going, wow, this is our wedding year. We've been
Mhm.
planning this now for however long, right? So, wow, this is our wedding year. And I got so many responses back from my couples. This was so fun. You made us smile. Thank you so much. And it was a simple note on New Year's Day to
Mhm.
say, you're getting married this year and I can't wait. And so that was just one little thing. And so I created a template email that I changed a little bit for each couple based on when it was or whatever and how long ago they'd booked me. But it was just a simple little touch point to make them smile
Mhm.
and again connect with you. And then for all those postponed couples, another touch point I added is I added into my calendar when their original date was, and I sent them a note that day and just say, hey, I'm thinking of you, and I hope you're still marking today in a sweet way. Dance in your living room to your original first dance song, smile, toast yourself, whatever today is. And
Mhm.
then guess what? We'll celebrate you later on. And I can't wait till that day. And so it was just one more way of connecting you to them. You want them to understand that they matter to you and that they're not
Mhm.
just a number to you. And depending on your business and how many clients you are satisfying, that can be really hard.
Yeah.
But we have to remember the wedding world, especially, is a very personal business. What we are doing is very personal for them. It's so different from corporate events. It's so different from other things. For couples, weddings is a very personal business. And we have to remember that when we're communicating with them. So
Mhm.
those are two things that you can focus on in your customer experience in the off time. Think about additional touch points you can add in.
Okay. Yeah, I love that. And those aren't expensive things. It's
No.
not like you're sending a big gift or something like that. You're just taking the time to market for them, because
Yep.
this is not their 20th wedding. This isn't their 20th
Exactly.
couple. This is their first, or maybe their second, right?
Yes.
Or their fifth. I don't know. But right? Like this is that special moment for them. I think often in the wedding and events industry, we can get jaded because it's like Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Totally.
Or, and again, depending on what your business is, whether you're a DJ or like we are in staffing, catering, a venue, you might have a wedding on Thursday, a wedding on Saturday, a wedding on Sunday. The wedding on Sunday is your third couple of the week. And it might
Yep.
be very easy to treat that couple like, oh my goodness, my weekend's almost over.
Right.
Instead of like, this is your one wedding. This is the one
Exactly.
time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you have to amp yourself back up each and every time. I get that question a lot. Like, how do you keep going each time?
You read my mind.
Good. One of the things for me, and it's a weird thing, and it's not meant to be an ego thing, is sometimes I go back and read my reviews
Mhm.
or I read my thank you notes from couples. And realizing that I have made an impact on each and every one of them keeps me going. And there's no doubt that that helps. So when I get to a low time in the week or a low time in the year, I just pull up Wedding Wire the Knot and read my reviews. And I'm like, oh, wow, that couple that I loved, they appreciated what I did for them. Again, that's also why the whole ideal couple thing is because you're going to have those raving reviews that you can then use to feed your motivation to keep going.
That's huge when you realize the impact that you're making.
Yes.
It totally, oh, wow. That's great. That is
Yeah.
wonderful. So you mentioned Wedding Wire and the Knot, and I know that you've been an educator for them, and I saw you speak, I believe, a couple years ago at Wedding Wire World. So you've been a voice in this industry, a very powerful voice in this industry for quite some time now. What would you say for someone who's new in this industry? Maybe they just started their business at the beginning of 2020.
Woohoo!
Um,
Welcome to the industry.
yeah, this is a party. This is how it always is. Someone who's new into the industry, what are some resources that they could tap into? I mean, we talked about the Knot and the Wedding Wire, and I just want to kind of take those off the table. What are other things that you have found that pound for pound have just really helped your business grow or kind of have pushed you along professionally?
That leads me to kind of that third area of the business that you can focus on right now, which is that relationships, because relationships are one of the most powerful things you could possibly have in your business in this industry. Again, just like it's personal for our couples, it's also personal for a lot of these businesses. We work with people who, whether it's a one-man show, whether it's a husband-wife team, whether it's a bigger group, whatever it is, these are people who've chosen to grow their business in this industry. And relationships can mean everything. Not only is this a huge referral industry, and that's why we want small business, people are starting to focus on this, but not only is it about referrals, relationships are also about learning about a new resource. And, maybe there's a new venue opening up. And so someone who knows that that would fit your couple go, hey, Bethel, you should check out this venue. Like that's because I have a relationship with that person and they know what venues would fit me. Maybe it's about learning about a new floral opportunity where, oh, hey, here's a new source for flowers if you're struggling with your other. That's because you have relationships in this business that will fill you in on that. Maybe it's also, we know that once we can go back to doing in-person events, it's amazingly powerful to have a wonderful wingman too, to go with you to these events. And those are your partners in the industry that you could be leaning on. It's great to have a solid venting to partner because people outside this industry don't understand what we deal with. And as much as we
Absolutely.
love our normal friends, it's nice to vent to someone who gets it and who understands what couples or, daily events expect. There's so many positive things to having solid relationships in this industry. And that's what you need to start on in the beginning. Now, relationships are not about handing somebody your card at a networking event and thinking that's it. It's about actually investing in the business. It is going to that networking group every single month. So that way you become the familiar face and they get to know you as a human and not just a logo that they see somewhere.
So you're telling me that stack of 9 business cards that I picked up at the last networking meeting I went to a year ago doesn't count?
No, unless you actually do something with them.
Okay. Of
Exactly,
course. Oh, there you go.
exactly, exactly. And for the people who have your card, if they're not doing anything with it, that's on them too. So there were a few things that built my business quickly initially. And one of the big things was focusing on having people know who I am and what I do and why. Again, you have to get back to your why. Who do you service? Who do you think you're servicing? And I know when you're a new business, you're not positive yet, and that's okay. You will make mistakes early on. You will say yes to people to take a job, and I totally understand that. But you need to learn lessons from every single one of those. So when you're early, every single wedding you do, every single event you do, afterwards, you need to ask yourself, is that one I want to do again? Is that a couple I want to satisfy again? Is that a business I want to work for again? Whatever it is. And if it's a no, why was it? And so you can avoid those in the future. If yes, why was it? So you can have more of those in the future. So when you're new, yes, you may totally be doing ones you don't want to ever do again. That's okay. They were a job, it earned you money, you met people. So, but learn a lesson from that and figure out who you can. As you do more and more of those, you start to see who your ideal couple is also attracted to in other categories. Those are the people you really want to build business relationships with, because those are the ones who also serve as your ideal client.
Mhm.
I know who my favorite wedding planners are because we tend to attract the same kind of client. I know who my favorite DJs are because we tend to attract the same kind of client. So photographers as well, we attract the same kind of client. So when you see people over and over again, those are the ones you want to invest real relationship time on.
Got it. So those are kind of those accidental ones that you're bumping into, like at this wedding. Oh, and then a week from now, another one. And then, oh, I have this one. And that's a photographer. That's a venue. And so you starting to realize this is kind of where I'm gravitating towards. I want to ask you a
Totally.
question about that. And I want to drill in even more into the relationship side of things. What happens if you feel yourself, I don't want to say inevitably, but you feel that kind of drift and you don't like the direction that it's going, but it's happening. You're getting business referrals, and you're always at that one venue, and, maybe the venue manager's giving you problems, but you keep being referred by the wedding planner. What happens when you feel that drift? How can you kind of like rebrand yourself almost? Maybe you're not totally rebranding yourself, but how would you suggest someone does that?
It goes back to, what do you show in your stuff? So what are the things that you are showing? And are you raving about that venue? Well, then you're setting yourself up for getting more of those. If you are not showing that as much, and instead you're showing more and raving about the venues that you do love to do, even if you've only done one or two or three events there, but you know that's your client, those are the things you want to be showing off. Now, I am not one who talks about ideal clients from a demographic perspective or where do they shop, all that kind of stuff. And I know a lot of people do. For me, it goes back to having the same core values around whatever you do. So people will be high end about certain things about their events, and they'll be low end about certain things in their events. The same bride who has a David's bridal dress will have Jimmy Choo shoes, maybe because she cares more about one thing than the other. So you want to find the couples who care about and value what you do. And it isn't necessarily the super high budget about everything else. It might be. I mean, there's couples I do where my officiant fee is a rounding error in their budget. It is the teeniest little thing.
Mhm.
But I also have couples where I'm in a backyard wedding and I'm probably the most expensive thing they've done
Mm.
because they value the ceremony and love what I do and how I do it. So then the question is, how do you market that? And it is really talking about the things you are providing that your clients value from you, because then those people who value the same things will be continuing to connect with you.
That is so powerful because you're right. A lot of people look at who's your ideal couple. And I've heard that a couple of different times in the industry at different points. And usually it's like demographical stuff, just like you're
Mhm.
saying, either location or like who are they as people, income levels or whatever. And that stuff really doesn't matter because it sounds like what you're saying. Really, you're looking for the connection point because whether you are the Jimmy Choo part or whether you're the David Bridal part of that example you gave, you understand that and you're communicating more of that to allow your marketing efforts to attract those people who value it. I love that.
Exactly. Now, there's no doubt budgets do matter for certain things, of course. If you're a high end venue, yes, you need people who can be affording to do your venue, but they may decide that because they love your venue, they are putting a huge percentage of their budget into that. And they may not value some of the other things. And so they may have, their grandma might do their cake. I'm not suggesting grandma do the cake, obviously, but we know what happens because they might not care about that part. So it isn't necessarily that the couple has to have an overall certain income level, even for those venues. They may just value that part of it even more. And so put a higher percentage of their budget into that. And I'm also not saying that there's not a place in this market for every level, because there is.
Mhm.
Couples need each of those different price points based on what they value. And so people who will absolutely dominate a certain price point of this industry, even a lower price point, that's really smart, because that is, as long as you are enjoying what you're doing and enjoying the people that it's bringing, and you have to make sure that your process Remember, if you are getting paid more for what you do, you can have fewer clients and a higher end process. If you have a lower end of what you do, so you have a smaller budget or smaller what you charge, then obviously you need a lot more clients and you need to make sure your process is much more ready to go, because you can't end up spending as much time with every client or you go broke. So make sure wherever you are in the market, your customer experience matches that. So
Mhm.
whether you are more or less, I actually had
Yeah.
an officiant that I met with at one point who was kind of jealous of what I charged, and he
Hmm.
wanted to start charging more. And I said, well, okay, now let's talk about how you have to change your process, change your marketing, change all these things about your business in order to attract those people and service them properly. And he was like, yeah, that's not worth it. And I'm like, I know it's not, but you need to see the ramifications. It's not just doubling your price. That might not even be possible. You have to service those couples differently because they naturally have different expectations
Hmm.
once you are at the higher price point, and that is a natural expectation. It's justifiable. So think about who you want to service and make sure you do it.
Do you feel like in this industry it's important to think about the kind of the 10-year, 20-year plan? Because I feel like a lot of folks in our industry, incredibly talented folks, are maybe vendors to provide a creative outlet. And kind of to your experience, you were on Wall Street, and but you do have a creative side. You do have a connection side that you wanted to make with some of these people, that there was something about that corporate world that maybe you didn't like as much. But I feel like I've seen a number of scenarios where you have someone who's kind of doing both. They want to shoot 6 or 12 weddings a year, for a photography or videography, but then they also have a another part-time job or even another full-time job maybe that they're juggling. What role do you think that plays in kind of deciding how many clients you want to take on? Because that's a totally large consideration.
There's no question. And I think the number one thing you have to do is, no matter how many you're taking on and whether it's your full-time thing or a part-time thing, is you have to approach this as a business. It is not a hobby.
Hmm.
Your couples and their families deserve nothing less. And so it has to be a professional. You have to be a professional and you have to approach it like a professional, whether you do 5 weddings or 50 weddings. Your clients are paying for a professional to do this. And you're hurting the whole industry too if you approach it like a hobby and people see it like a hobby. We
Hmm.
know that if the world understands the professionalism that the wedding and event industry requires, we all could charge more. It is that rising ship, right? Because,
Hmm.
rising tide lifts all boats. And
Yeah.
whereas if people see this as we're just all hobbyists or creatives who don't need to earn a living, that hurts all of us too.
Yeah.
So we need to be sure that no matter how many you're doing, so then you need to say to yourself, okay, am I doing it for a certain income thing, or is it a creative outlet? If it's a creative outlet, you still have to be sure that you're charging a professional rate. Otherwise, you hurt all your colleagues. That's not
Hmm.
fair either. And it's not worth leaving your family on Saturdays, even as a creative thing, if you're not also being appropriately compensated for that. So think about what it is that you need to do and want to do, and also figure out who those couples are then. Because if you have a full-time gig, you can't necessarily be meeting with couples at a certain time during the week when all the rest of us could be. So just
Hmm.
think about what type of packages or what type of offerings you're actually doing that fit in with the life that you need.
Hmm. Absolutely. That makes so much sense. And I think for the folks that may be listening to this, if they're even interested or excited about getting in the wedding and events industry, to have that in their mind. Like, I need to figure out what corner of the market I like based on what I can do. Do I want to meet with 12 clients a year? Do I want to meet with 120?
Yep.
In the staffing industry, we had a point where we got up to almost 700 weddings was the closest
That's
that we did.
crazy.
It's nuts, but what we did was a lot lighter touch. We were the
Right.
last person in the purchase cycle. A
Right.
lot of times
Right.
it's like throw on a server to go with the taco truck or something like that.
Totally.
We were that piece right in the bottom. So
Right.
we were able to do that. And we weren't really meeting with couples. We weren't going for walkthroughs. We
Totally.
weren't doing some of those things. For someone like yourself,
You're more of a transaction in
exactly.
the, yep, absolutely, which is totally fine. You want that then people, but you still want that your marketing is attracting the people that you can service best, because then
Exactly.
they'll be super psyched with what you provided for them. And then we'll review that in a very positive way, tell their friends. And yeah, you have a lot of follow-on business opportunities with them. Certain people in our industry do too. If you do a great job staffing in their wedding, well, when their mom's throwing a party,
Hmm.
You may then have the opportunity because they really liked what you did for the wedding. You can do that. Their office is having an industry event or whatever. They can bring you in on that. So when you exceed expectations initially, you have a lot of opportunity for follow-on business. Not everyone in the wedding industry does, but it is something. We don't have repeat business in the wedding industry. They're not getting married in the exact same wedding a year later,
Hmm.
but you have follow-on business opportunities. So you want to be sure you're exceeding expectations initially, because that can lead to a lot more revenue down the way for you.
Because of the pandemic, because of the impact that COVID-19 has had on the wedding and events industry, do you feel like we're going to see a massive shift, a substantial shift in how people consume wedding and event services? Or do you think that things are going to go back to a semblance of normal, whatever that was, right?
Right.
Once things go back, and once the vaccine has been distributed in a mass way, or whatever. Do you feel like we're going to see that a big shift in the industry?
I think I'm gonna see both. I
Okay.
think that you're going to have there were a lot of people who decided to scale back on their plans in terms of size to be able to still have a wedding this year. And what a lot of people saw is that you can do a micro wedding in a gorgeous, incredibly detailed way. It doesn't have to be bare bones just because you only have 25 guests, 15 guests, 30 guests. And so I think you had a lot of people who saw, and a lot of the couples who reached out to me who did that. So I had some of my couples who had planned bigger weddings scaled back to keep their date. But I also had people who reached out to me because now they had a scale back, or they were supposed to get married in Mexico and didn't, supposed to get married in Costa Rica. And a lot of those couples expressed to me that they found this freeing, that they
Mm.
were allowed to give up on this huge event that they didn't really want. And so it allowed them to use the pandemic as an excuse to have a super intimate experience. And I think that you will have a lot of people in the future who realize that that really fits them, and they're excited to just gather the people closest to them and not have something large. But again, it can be incredibly detailed, gorgeous florals and incredibly high-end linens, because they can actually spend more per guest when they have
Mhm.
fewer people there. And so I think you saw a lot more of the guest experience stuff become more important, because when you can't have a raging dance floor, what else do you do? So you have other activities for your guests and your loved ones that isn't the norm. So I think you're going to have a lot of that will continue for sure. You also are going to have, I think, more of a hybrid of, especially at least ceremonies, being both virtual for people who aren't comfortable traveling for a while or can't travel and never would have. Some of the people who did do a Zoom element in their micro wedding found that people were logging on who would never have said yes to going to their wedding anyway.
Mhm.
And so they were able to involve more of their community by doing as a hybrid type of event. And I think you will see that for people who are great about doing video and streaming, there's going to be an opportunity forever on that. That will,
Mhm.
I think, be something to stay. But you're definitely going to still have the big stuff. You have some couples who can't imagine their wedding anything smaller than 200 people in a raging dance floor. So you will have this normal or normal-ish version that absolutely starts again and continues. So I think there's almost not even a bifurcation, but I think there will be. I think that you will have people want the big, huge, and raging thing, but there's also an opportunity for people to design something with an intimate experience, very high end. And so people shouldn't ignore that opportunity.
Do you think the middle is kind of getting cleared out? Do you think that you're going to see the 200-person wedding, or a 30, 40 person and less kind of wedding, and then the 80 to 120 range
That
that I feel like was pretty popular is going to
was
be
pretty
cleared out?
normal. Exactly. That was
Yeah.
kind of the norm for the long. I still think they'll be back, but I think that might wait a little bit. I think that that might be the one that maybe we don't see as much in 2021 or even 22. That because I do think that you are going to have a hesitation to travel for a while for certain
Mhm.
people. They are going to, and I don't know. I mean, it may remember the flu pandemic of 1918 led to the roaring 20s, right?
Mhm.
So we may end up with this huge decadent party. Who knows? But
Mhm.
I do think that for a little while, there will be people hesitant to travel. So I think people, instead of the 80, it may be 50, not even necessarily by the couple's choice fully, but
Mhm.
also by situations. I think you're also going to see naturally a lot of people are hurting economically,
Mhm.
but you have a lot of people who are not hurting economically.
Very true.
So the ones who are not hurting economically or did very well during this because they're in businesses that succeed in times like this,
Cleaning
they
services,
have money
whatever. I
to
mean, there have been quite a few businesses that have done very well, even small businesses.
yeah. And so those will still have money to spend and will not be hesitating. There might be an image perspective that they won't want to be seen as flaunting it for a little bit, but I expect those holiday parties to still come back quickly and all of those things because they have the money.
Mhm.
So you don't want to assume that all of your couples are hurting financially because that's not the case at all.
Mhm.
But you definitely have some where maybe their parents can't help as much as they had hoped or things like that. And so it gets smaller from that perspective. I definitely think a lot of couples have just realized what's important to them too, that
Mhm.
gathering their community and they just want to hug the people who matter. And
Mhm.
so I do think that the intimate thing is here to stay at least for a while.
I think that's beautiful, and that's maybe one of the silver linings that this whole thing has had, is because people do, when you if you're reducing your guest count. I know a couple of the weddings that we've done during the gaps in the different shutdowns here in California, um, the different gaps that we've done, we've actually been doing some live streaming stuff. I don't even
Right.
think you and I have discussed this yet, but
No.
we've been doing some of the live streaming stuff, and we found that the couples who are downsizing their wedding from a 200-person wedding to 50 people. I mean, you're cutting 150 people. That is a
Exactly.
substantial amount. But the 50 people that are there really are people that they have to have there.
Totally.
And the folks who we end up doing the live stream for are really, really excited and maybe happy they don't have to spend money on the
Right.
hotel and all the
Right.
travel. I mean, there's a lot of hassle that goes in with that, even minus COVID.
Right. And so what that means for wedding businesses is what I think that you need to do is figure out what would be so if you're thinking about your ideal couple in each of those scenarios. So what would your ideal couple's micro wedding look like? And is there kind of a package or an offering you can create that will be really great for them? So again, it doesn't have to mean scaled back, it just is scaled back in size. So if you're a venue and you're like, wow, that doesn't usually meet our minimums, well, what can you do to add that? So maybe it's pre-ceremony, a cool cocktail hour. So where there's extra past food at the time or whatever, or you're upgrading their bar, or what are the things you can do that still meet what you need financially as a business,
Mhm.
but that can satisfy that micro wedding? And then so
Definitely.
figure out at each size, what is it that your offering would look like? Again, maybe there's more florals, there's more decor, but so you're still meeting your minimum budget for their size. So
Mhm.
think about what your offering is.
I was going to ask, Bethel, what do you see a lot more of? Do you see couples who are looking to do more of a DIY and take a blank canvas venue and customize it to their specific needs? Because I know there was for a while quite a push away from kind of the traditional banquet hall, go to the hotel, like that sort of thing. Do you see, and your interaction with not only vendors but couples, do you see people kind of looking to go back into that, everything's kind of done for you and set up model? Or do you see couples really, really excited about taking a venue that's a blank canvas venue and coming in and bringing in only what's more important because of the personalization element that you just said?
I think that you're going to have both. You will always have both. My couples, I have very few banquet hall type couples. That's just not usually my couples.
Hmm.
But I have officiant colleagues around the country that is their bread and butter.
Hmm.
These banquet halls are full and they have couples all the time. And because, yes, again, if they're not caring about certain things,
Yeah.
so, I mean, I had one couple years back. I won't even talk about what venue it was, or it was one of those package type things. I'm not in the package. That doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
So I'm never offered in the package. But the couple had me. And when I was having frustrations getting pictures from their photographer, I became really close to this couple. And I was like, hey, I'm not getting pictures. And they said, you know what? It was very little we cared about that day other than you. And so we were fine that it was a B-level photographer, a B-level DJ. We didn't care. And
Hmm.
so we were fine with all these things taken care of. It was decisions we didn't have to make,
Yeah.
but we wanted you. So I think there will always be those couples. And I think sometimes even more now, some couples, the average, I think on Wedding Wire and the Knot stats show that like 14 vendors are hired for any couple's wedding. That's on average. Some couples don't want that hassle.
Yeah,
They want it all
absolutely.
just, especially when you've been postponing, they have to postpone 14 vendors,
14, yeah.
right? They have to reach out to everybody and try to juggle all of that.
That's a
I have
part-time
one
job in its of
in and of
itself.
itself, right? I have one couple who just reached out. They had postponed from this May originally to October and now postponed to next year. And they just reached out to me and the photographer, only two of us, to say, here are the 4 dates they're looking at. Well, of the 4 dates, just me and the photographer, only one works. And so imagine trying to factor in all these other vendors. They have to give them up. So some couples still want that. They want to choose every single person, to choose what they're doing, to take that blank canvas venue and really turn it into them. Others are excited to not have the pressure on that.
Mhm.
So again, I think you as a vendor need to figure out where you fit in that and what are your offerings going to be in each of those. Some vendors I know are thrilled to be part of a package because then they don't have to market themselves. They don't have to meet all those things. That doesn't fit me and my business and it wouldn't make me happy. So
Mhm.
I don't do that, but figure out where you as a business play best. Now, if you are going to do that, I suggest different offerings. I
Mhm.
suggest that if you are going to be part of a package and charging less, your offering also has to be less. You don't want to just discount yourself for the heck of it.
Mhm.
So make sure that offering is less. Maybe it's fewer hours of coverage. Maybe it's, they need to add on to get the uplights, whatever it is, figure out what that is that you're offering for less to be part of a package. And then they can do add-ons versus when they're buying you specifically. It has to be two
Mm.
different offerings.
Got it. Just to really separate, make a
Yeah,
distinctive one, you being a part of that package, and then
right.
two, you kind of giving everything you've got on
Exactly.
a ultimate kind of experience that you're going to provide as a
Yeah.
vendor.
If they're hiring you specifically, they want what you have to offer. If you're just part of a package, then you're part of the package. So,
Makes a lot of sense. All right, everyone. Well, we are going to move to the segment of our show that we call the wedding wheel. And Bethel, I'm excited about this. We've got our wedding wheel right here. So we're going to go ahead and pull it up here to the forefront and give it a whirl and see what we get. Now, what we do here, we give it a spin, whichever section, I guess, it lands on. We're going to ask Bethel that question. She's going to have a little bit of time to think about her answer. And then we're going to move into our two other segments and we're going to come back and we're going to do the answer here. So make sure you're listening for Bethel's answer in a little bit. But we're going to go ahead and spin the wedding wheel now. Ooh, all right. I'm excited to hear your answer for this one.
okay.
If you were to change industries, what would you do? And I want to say, because you've done so many things in so many different industries, it can't be Wall Street, can't be weddings or events. And those are the rules. There you go. So we're going to come back. You'll have a little bit of time to think about this.
Okay.
We're going to come back around and we're going to get to your answer. I am very excited to see what we get. So we're going to leave that right there. The next segment is called Left at the Altar. Now, this is an opportunity for you to share with us a learning experience that you had, maybe a mistake or a failure. And, mistakes aren't bad. Failures aren't bad. They're just that little message that maybe the universe is sending you or whatever to say, hey, it's time to switch directions, do something a little bit different. Change up what I'm doing. So can you share with us a time where maybe you had an oopsie or a failure or a mistake, maybe even early on in your career, that can really help the audience maybe not make a similar mistake in their own business?
Definitely. What's crazy is, when I suggested people take a look at their customer experience and their communication plan, so many of the different emails or things I've added along the way have been because of mistakes. And a lot of it has been because of assumptions. And that's where a lot of my mistakes have been, assuming that somebody knows something when there's no question that they can't, or assuming that I have all the information that I need. So, for instance, I now send a final reminders email 2 weeks out before the wedding that tells couples, here's what time I'm getting there. Here's what time I have you for the ceremony. So I'm getting here this time. Here's what you need to bring. Don't forget to bring the marriage license. Don't forget to bring these ceremony components, because time and time again, couples have forgotten that stuff.
Mhm.
They leave the marriage license at home. They thought that I was bringing, the stones for a stone blessing. They thought I was bringing the wine for a wine blessing. So many assumptions have been made. And if I'm not out front about that. And so then, of course, we're juggling at the end, or I need to ask them to send someone to get their marriage license. I feel like a jerk, but I can't marry them without that.
Mhm.
And I'm like, at least have them text it, a picture of it, tell them that they're on the way back, and then we can start. Like, I need to know. Otherwise, I'm committing fraud. I'm pretending to do something legal that it isn't legal, right?
Yeah.
So there have been a lot of those things along the way that I have made assumptions about, and we end up having to scramble, and it's painful and it's
Mhm.
embarrassing. And I just feel like less of a professional, even though it technically wasn't my fault because I just didn't take the time to remind them. 2020 has been really weird that way because it's been so odd that I've gotten off my normal processes. I have a workflow, I have checkpoints, and yet it's felt more casual, and I've ended up with frustrations. Yeah, one of my couples a few months ago forgot their marriage license, and it was a micro wedding of 12 people, and yet someone had to leave to go to their house and get it. Like,
Mhm.
it's just little things that it's like, man, why did I not do that?
Mhm.
But one of the assumptions was, another one is that I was at a venue and it was super embarrassing. I did not ask who the procession was. And it was a venue that I can't see where they're coming from. And
Mm.
so I thought that everybody from the wedding party was already there, and they changed music again. And I told them to rise while still some wedding party was still going to be coming out. Like, it
Oh
was just, I
no.
felt like an idiot. And I'm like, well, you're all getting a greeting. They're standing and waiting for you. It wasn't yet the bride's turn. But because I hadn't asked the order and I had no idea who was coming and what song changes were happening, and I couldn't see around the corner, yeah, it was so embarrassing. And it's like, I
Assumptions.
should know better. It's all
Assumptions
assumptions. It's
though.
all
Yeah.
assumptions.
I can't tell you how many times that's played out in my own experience with business. And you can't assume. People are so different. This is a deeply personal industry, like you said. And so that's a really good one.
But remember, by the way, tell them why you're asking. So if you're doing a reminder or you're asking a certain information, just let them know why you need to hear that.
Mhm.
So why is it that I ask about the procession flow, right? I'm not the wedding planner back there doing it. Like, why do I care about that? Well, so that I avoid mistakes like that.
Mhm.
Or why do I remind them about the marriage license? Because I've had to send dozens of people to go get it. So as long as they understand the why for
Mhm.
it, that you're not just doing something for a random reason, that helps a lot.
And that sounds like it would be a perfect applicant for our daily prescription. Um, to help avoid those assumptions, you have to be educating your guests or your clients, would you say?
Yes. Yes, very much so. And so you have to think about, and I know it's tough when you're new, you haven't gone through these yet. And so maybe ask a colleague, so what are some mistakes along the way? And yeah, you're just going to keep changing your process. So think about what frustrations you had this year, for instance. Mistakes were made, or what could have been smoother. It's not even a full mistake, but what could have been smoother. And then think about what you could do to avoid that. What is
Mhm.
something you could put into your process? An email, a call, a text the morning of, whatever any of that is. What is it that you can just put in a place to make that not happen again?
Mhm. I love that. That's so good. Okay, well, we're done with our daily prescription. It's time to get back to the wedding wheel answer. So, the question that we asked you was, if you were to change industries, what would you do? So, Bethel, what is the answer?
I have two different answers. So, when I was debating starting this business, and so debating leaving the family business and starting something for myself, I sat down and said, okay, if I didn't have to earn a living, unfortunately, I don't have the freedom not to, but if I didn't have to, what would I do? And I think that's how you get to sort of your core values and what makes you happy.
Mhm.
And I either would marry people. Is that a thing? And it clearly is a thing,
Mhm.
1,000 couples later. Or I'd run a philanthropy. So at the time, I was on the board of two different nonprofits, the San Diego Women's Foundation and Komen for the Cure San Diego affiliate. Was very involved in a lot of different philanthropic needs. And that really gets to the core of who I am. And so what I've realized is that what I do now and what that is shares something, which is I want to have an impact. I would have an impact on the world. I want to have an impact on people's lives. And you can do that in a small way or a big way. And so my overall answer would be that I would go into the philanthropic world, which I've never done before, and work for a nonprofit. The reality is the kind of life that my husband and I want to lead in whatever our next chapter looks like, that doesn't work. And so because we want to live further out, more remote, a quieter life, and so instead, it would be finding a way to be able to have more flexibility but still be able to make an impact. That is who I am, and that's what matters to me.
Mhm.
So if I'd gotten the question of if I won the lottery, what would I do? I would still marry 10 to 20 couples a year. It satisfies who I am and what I want to do, but I'd find a way to do some other things that are impact. So it has to be impact driven in whatever that looks like, whether that's the philanthropic world or something else, but I need to have an impact.
I think you'd be incredible in the philanthropic world. I think your corporate background combined with what you do now, combined with your coaching, I mean, you have so many different touch points and probably so many different insights into different industries because of the different couples you've married and because of the different types of businesses you've worked with. I think you do amazing in that. And to encourage that a little, I feel like with the remote way that everyone is going these days, I mean, it's not out of the question for you to get 100 acres somewhere out in the middle of nowhere and
Yep,
just do all this stuff remote, right?
exactly.
Strong
If
internet
I could, I
signal, and
would.
there you go.
Exactly. As long as you have a strong internet signal, that's what we're all finding.
Yep. Awesome. Well, Bethel, thank you so much for coming on today. The last little bit here is called the honeymoon phase.
Okay.
And our honeymoon phase would not be complete without asking you, where can we find you? Where can we connect with you? If there are people listening, even who are interested in adding you to a vendor list or using your services, or even, taking advantage of the incredible coaching that you have, where can people connect with you?
I'm happy to share that. So there's 3 different websites. As an officiant, my business is Ceremonies by Bethel. So the website is at ceremoniesbybethel.com. That's where you can find me on Facebook as well. On Instagram, I actually use my name, Bethel Nathan. So at Bethel Nathan is where you followed me as an officiant and as more of a human being.
Mm-hmm.
As a coach, that business is Elevate by Bethel because I love helping people elevate their business. And so that's elevatebybethel.com. On Instagram, it is Elevate by Bethel. That is a newer Instagram because I wanted to split it off. And same with on my Facebook page. Again, I've been doing a weekly Facebook Lives, mostly on Tuesdays at noon Pacific, and that's on Elevate by Bethel. And then my husband and I recently launched an online learning platform with online courses that we have the first few there, and we're going to be adding a lot more over the next few months. And that is elevateyourweddingbusiness.com. And that's
Awesome.
where you can find through the end of the year courses. We've been offering them for free. And at the beginning of the year, we will start to be charging a little bit for them. But all of our classes fall under the huge umbrella of Ideal Couple Cycle and Customer Experience. Each one is a bite-sized 15 to 20 minute video and pre-worksheets and post-worksheets. We want it very actionable. So happy to work with you in any way, shape, or form.
I love that. And something I really liked, I was checking out your Elevate by Bethel site. I love how you have a little help, a lot of help.
Mhm.
And I think that's really important because a lot of times, just like couples, to different business owners, we have different weaknesses. Someone may come from an extremely corporate background and have no problem setting up systems, and they really understand sales cycle, and they understand how to look at a P&L and cash flow, and they understand some of those more businessy sides of things, but they're struggling with something creatively, or vice versa. They're super creative, but they're having a hard time understanding how to create better touch points along their sales cycle to help them with that customer experience. So it seems like with those 2 different types of packages, you can either get in really, really deep with them or just give them the help that they need. I love that.
Definitely. And I suggest a lot really start with that little help, which is usually 2 hours together.
Mhm.
We do an hour at a time with as much time in between as they want. And because the things we'll talk about in the first hour, they then have to go work on it. And then we
Mhm.
usually come back for more. For the more help, the lot of help, that a lot of my clients almost kind of have me on retainer.
Mhm.
So it's not, I have very few coaching clients who want to meet every single week. More often than not, it's let me work on things and then I'll come back for more. I'll come back for more. Or, hey, can I use one of those sessions where you just review all my email templates? Happy
Mhm.
to. So they can kind of use me however they want me. And that's a lot more fun for me. So happy
Absolutely.
to.
I love it. Well, Bethel, thanks again. I appreciate your time. It's really been a pleasure. I've learned a lot, and I'm so excited for everyone listening to this right now. If you are listening on podcast form, check out our YouTube. We're the Venue RX pretty much everywhere, both on Instagram, Facebook. We have a website now. It's not totally done yet, but we're working on
Congratulations.
it. And yeah, Bethel, thank you so much for your time. I'm looking
Thank you
forward
so much for
to,
having me.
yeah, absolutely. All
Oh,
right. Well, everyone will see you in the next episode.